Hello there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 356. Our weekly little get together, we talk about recent news. As always, your host, Stephen Brown, and tonight seems like if you're expecting a new Switch to come out this year, you're going to be sorely disappointed. We have a whole bunch of Konami rumors kicking around, including stuff about Metal Gear, Castlevania, etc., and how they might be PlayStation exclusive, and more. But first, I want everyone here to know this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching us live here at Twitch TV /GamePoints every Tuesday at 8 p.m., or later at any other myriad of video hosting platforms, be it YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, etc., feel free to join the conversation. Any questions, comments, concerns you might have, just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. All right. Now that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into our very first story of the night here. This is via Video Game Chronicle. No, not Video Game Chronicle. Yes, Video Game Chronicle. Sorry, I need to get my story straight. Nintendo reports Switch sales slowdown and suggests no new hardware this year. Now, this article and all the ones we'll be going over today will be provided down in the description below, so feel free to take a look at them at your own time. I highly recommend you all do. Or you could take a look at them over our Discord server where they're posted to. To the article itself. Nintendo has reported a slowdown in Switch hardware sales that suggested no new hardware will be released before April 2024. The company has now sold 125.62 million Switch consoles as of March 31st, up from 122.5 million. But the end of the console sales have declined by 22%. That is an impressively huge number. It makes it one of the best selling consoles of all time. But no king reigns forever. They are starting to slow down on sales, as we can see. And it's probably due to the fact that the console is approaching 7 years. Now, that is a very long time for a generation. I understand that the PlayStation 4 generation went on, and the prior generation went on a little bit longer than expected, but that was unusual. Typically, a generation only lasts about 5 to 6 years. 7's getting a little long of a tooth. And we are on the eve of launching arguably what's going to be the biggest Switch game ever to be released on the thing, Tears of the Kingdom, coming out later this Friday. And it could be Nintendo's last major console game for the Switch. Now, there have been rumors for a while due to a Switch's age and the fact that it's starting to really show how old it is these days, especially in the light of some of the newer stuff coming out, that Nintendo would probably release new hardware as early as this year. But that does not seem to be the case according to their recent quarterly financials. We'll go on back to the article as they get more into that. Its results for the end of the fiscal year, Nintendo confirmed that it sold a total of just shy of 18 million consoles during the 12-month period, which means it missed its year start sales target of 21 million. That in itself was brought down to 18. The company forecasts it will sell 15 million consoles during the current fiscal year ending March 31, 2024, which represents a further 16.5% decline, as Switch enters a significant slowdown during its 7th year on the market. That's a combination of factors. Not only is the Switch pretty old, they're kind of hitting saturation point at this time. Everyone who wants one has one. But the economic situation around the country and, nay, the world, is definitely teetering on the brink. I'm going to be getting to even more layoffs before we end up the show today, which seems to be a recurring theme. It's not a good time to be releasing new hardware. It's just not. And if Nintendo can hold off and wait till, say, 2024, 2025 even for things to improve, it would behoove them to do so, considering how large of an install base and how huge of an attach rate, I might add, the Nintendo Switch has. Back to the article. Speaking of the call after the results, President Shuntaro Furukawa reportedly suggested that amid slowing console sales, Nintendo isn't completely confident in hitting its next 15 million target. Additionally, according to Bloomberg, Furukawa added that no new or upgraded hardware is factored into Nintendo's annual forecast. So no new Switch, no Switch 2, and no Switch Pro either. But that would also include like a bigger bezel Switch or any number of things that might be out there. They're not adding kind of those things into it, which hints that they're not coming. We do have also, because they're showing all the financial results right now, the best-selling Switch games currently on the market at the moment. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still holding high at 53.7 million copies. Impressive for a game that in itself was essentially a remake, just a collection of past Mario Karts thrown together. Animal Crossing coming in at 42, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at 31, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 29.81. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if Tears of the Kingdom can top that. I don't know if they're going to. They'll at the very least come close to it. At the very least, I do think they'll top it, given the fact that it's been so long since Zelda releases. The Switch. And listen, I like the Switch. I play a lot of games on Switch. I'm playing through Advance Wars and Fire Emblem right now. But if it's not a major Nintendo release, it's kind of dried up at the moment. You're not really going to find many good third-party games on there. I know. Put the pitchforks down. There is great stuff on there, to be certain. But it is a little bit more difficult to find excellent material on the Switch than it is, say, PC or PlayStation right now. So I think that valley, that dry spell, is definitely going to behoove Switch quite a bit to sell to sell copies of Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild had the benefit of coming out relatively at the same time the Switch launched, so I'll be very interested to see if they can replicate that. Of course, it will take years for it to get up to that number, but we'll get a good eye on how many copies of this is going to sell probably in the next week or two. Pokemon Sword and Shield coming at 25, Super Mario Odyssey at 25 as well. One of those things, by the way, they haven't released a mainstream Mario game in quite a while. So I'm very curious to know what's going on in the Mario front as well. Mario Odyssey is the last mainstream Mario game. What I mean by that is something like Mario Galaxy or Mario Sunshine or even Super Mario 3, etc. By the way, Papa, good to have you here. Always nice to see a familiar face. Pokemon Scarlet at 22.1, Super Mario Party rather at 19, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe at 15, another port, and Ring Fit Adventure at 15. Surprisingly strong attachment rate on this goddamn thing, by the way. Shockingly strong. So, what does all this mean? Well, it means that the Switch, it's finally starting to reach end of life. They're having to revise numbers of consoles sold every year downwards. There is a steep decline year over year, quarter over quarter, as far as that goes. It's time. I like the Switch. I think it's an amazing little handheld, but it has reached the limits of what it can do. It is time to put it in the closet and wait for and hope for the new thing to come out soon. When that happens, let me put it in the closet. Take a look at chat here. You'd be interested if the Mario movie, if you would be interested if the Mario movie and games combined. They kind of do. There's a lot of references to the other video games in the Mario movie, with Princess Peach slowly floating down, a la Mario 2. The obstacle course has to train on. There's a bunch of good callbacks to multiple Mario games throughout the thing. But if you're asking for like the plots or timelines to combine, I don't even think they all stand connected to begin with. They're all very much standalone projects. So that might be a little difficult to do. Anyways, let me know if you think you're ready for a new Switch. I certainly am. It's getting harder and harder for me to look at games that aren't running on 60 frames a second. The Switch can kind of get away with it due to its handheld nature, and on a smaller screen, it doesn't seem as bad. But yeah, it's time. It definitely is time for some new hardware, and I'm somewhat shocked we haven't heard of any new hardware yet. It could be that Nintendo's just sitting on it until economic conditions improve, and then they're just going to blast us with it. But I would imagine that we would have starting to get leaks on new hardware by now if that was going to be the case. Because you can't keep anything quiet anymore. And you need to give dev kits out to people to make games for it. So, who the hell knows what the big N is thinking? Moving on to the next topic here. This is via Push Square. Rumors about PS5 exclusivity for Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and the Castlevania are on the web right now. I don't know what send the web potty means. Push Square is a British website app. They invented the language, but they can't speak it. But to be fair, neither can I. To the article itself. Speculation on social media this weekend suggests Sony may have signed timed exclusivity agreements with Konami on a trio of titles, including Castlevania, Silent Hill, and Metal Gear Solid. Now, by the way, we do know Silent Hill is coming. Silent Hill 2 is being remade by Bloober Team. And there's a myriad of Silent Hill projects just being kicked around as well. It'll be interesting to see if they only sign, if the rumor, and this is a rumor, pans out, if this is going to be focused mainly on just Silent Hill 2 or if it's for the entire franchise. But once again, important to note, this is a rumor. Back to the article. Rumors have been swirling around for some kind of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater revival for several years now, and podcast host Nick Baker revived them this weekend after claiming Classic could reemerge at the upcoming PS5 showcase, or the PlayStation showcase rather, with some form of PlayStation 5 exclusivity attached. As is customary for internet insiders, Baker tempered the comments by saying his source is uncertain, and it's worth noting nearly 2 years ago he was confident of an infamous comeback before developer Sucker Punch shot those stories back down. Also interesting to note that we are having a bunch of rumors being kind of floated around by multiple sources that Sony will have a showcase either end of May or early June, meaning 3 to 4 weeks from now. So it would make sense that the rumor mill is kicking up again. Back to the article. However, Windows Central editor Jez Corden was quick to jump on the speculation, saying he heard similar about Metal Gear Solid exclusivity. In a follow-up tweet, he added the following. Just heard Sony landed a deal with Konami for Silent Hill, Metal Gear, and even maybe a new Castlevania. All of it seems rather uncertain, doesn't it? I would not be surprised if all of this turned out to be true. Sony has kind of gobbling up behind the scenes as they're simultaneously fighting Microsoft over it, trying to buy Activision. Sony has been making a lot of behind-the-scenes deals, either to pick up smaller support studios or just to lock in games into exclusivity contracts. There have been rumors that they have some kind of hidden agreement with Square to keep them from releasing stuff on Microsoft platforms as well. This is in line with what we have been seeing. Furthermore, Konami seems to be ready to do something. Now, I know that fuck Konami is still something that we should all hold near and dear to our hearts. It's not a company that has done very well by its consumers over the past decade or so, it seems. But they seem to be trying to gear up to come back out with a blunderbuss of titles because they do have an impressive back catalog. And it would be interesting to see what they can pull from it. Metal Gear, Castlevania, Silent Hill, these are only a few small number of franchises they can retreat back to and actually give us something. Konami has been very silent over the past few years, and I do think it's time for them to come roaring out with, hell, anything at this point. However, when it comes to Konami specifically, and just business in general, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Do not just blindly trust whatever they show us as being genuine, let alone worth playing. Konami in particular needs to be carefully scrutinized with an analytical eye to make sure that they are not pulling a bait and switch on us, considering some of the more shittier things that company has done in the past. Once again, turning to chat here, Rocco Gaming V says, Konami hasn't put out anything worthwhile since PlayStation 2. Disagree. PlayStation 3 had some great stuff, specifically Metal Gear Solid 4. I can make a case for Metal Gear Solid 5, by the way, despite that game essentially being unfinished. The tragedy about the fifth Metal Gear, in my opinion, is that while it is the absolute pinnacle of gameplay in that series, I love just playing that game, it is by far the worst when it comes to the plot. That's what makes Metal Gear 5, Solid 5, all the more tragic, is that you can see its brilliance shining through every now and then right when it feels like it's going somewhere, it crashes to a halt. But I will say that Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation 3 was an excellent, excellent game. However, I understand that sentiment, and I might be being a little nitpicky here. Let me know what you guys think about the potential Konami resurgence, by the way. I am eager to see what they can produce, but I goddamn guarantee I am going to be extremely leery of anything they have to offer until I have something in my hand and I am able to take a look at it. Moving on to the next topic here. This is via Games Radar. Once again, all these stories provided in the description down below. Final Fantasy XVI banned in Saudi Arabia due to reported refusal to make content changes. I'm going to start this off by saying, good on you, Square. There's no need to be editing yourselves for the sake of an oppressive totalitarian regime. I hope you do the same thing if China comes knocking. You're probably not going to, though, because let's face it, when it comes to sales figures, it's a billion people versus, I don't even know how many people are in Saudi Arabia, but it's not a billion. But it's good to see some people at least trying to stand up in this case. Going to the article itself. Final Fantasy 16 has been banned from release in Saudi Arabia. On May 3rd, the Saudi Arabian General Commission for Audiovisual Media Twitter account announced that Final Fantasy 16 had not been cleared to launch in the country. In short, this means Square Enix RPG won't be releasing in the country for the foreseeable future, until both Saudi Arabia and Square Enix come to the right sort of agreement. Right now, though, what's not clear what changes the Saudi Arabia supposedly requested of Square Enix in order to release Final Fantasy 16 in the country, and how the game would be altered as a result. It is worth noting, however, that Saudi Arabia has been big on the moral crusading when it comes to this particular branch. For example, Pixar's Lightyear, the Buzz Lightyear spinoff, was banned because there was a same-sex kiss. Also, before then, Marvel's Doctor Strange was yeeted from launch as well. So they are not afraid to give big budget features the axe. So it only makes sense that they'll do the same for games. I highly doubt whatever changes that the Saudi Arabian Audiovisual Media General Commission, whatever it's called, I highly doubt that whatever changes they're demanding Square makes are going to be cost effective for Saudi Arabia, because that also means they don't have to worry about translating it for that country or anything like that either. However, let us not pat Square Enix on the back too hard for this, because like I said, if China were making these demands, they would change them left and right. We've seen bigger companies than Square Enix acquiesce to their demands. For example, when Disney, to go back to something we're talking about, released those new Star Wars trilogies over in China, the movie posters really dramatically reduced the character of Finn down to either nothing, like a small little corner, or nothing, because God forbid China be exposed to an African-American man on their posters. I don't even think he's not African American. He's British, but you know what I mean. A black guy on the posters. God forbid, it's what happens when you try to get caught up in the PC lingo. You start stumbling over yourself trying to be polite. China refused to have him on there, and Disney bent over backwards to acquiesce to that. So I wouldn't expect Sony to. I would not be surprised to have Saudi Arabia do the same. Square Enix do the same thing. Let's not necessarily pat them on the back too hard. Let's take a look down at chat here. A billion Chinese people that can only be online for what? 3 hours a day? What are they going to do? Make posts on WeChat about it or whatever their social media is? China allows a few bits of Western media into their country every year, and it is gobbled up dramatically. It's one of the reasons why that Warcraft movie, while not necessarily a huge success in America, turned out to be a massive hit. Because of the Chinese market. I think it was Warcraft. Don't quote me on that. But there are reasons why more and more Hollywood pictures are setting things in China. One of the most recent Transformers movies, for example, had a huge fight scene in China, which allowed it to be released there. The Red Dawn remake removed any references to China throughout of it and made the threat completely North Korea. The newest Top Gun movie edited out Maverick's jacket, which had the Taiwanese flag on there. So this is something that happens a lot. There is a lot of money to be had in there, and companies will bend over backwards, compromising the roles left and right to try to appease that festering communist wound that is the CCP. But that said, we'll give Square Enix a little bit of praise for sticking their guns in this case, while simultaneously admitting that if it was a bigger country, they would probably make the changes they're being demanded of. Give a little, get a little, I guess. Moving on, here we have some, remember how I was talking about some economic news? First up, PixelOpus, the studio best known for Concrete Genie, is shutting down. They posted this tweet up a few days ago saying the following. Dear friends, our PixelOpus adventure has come to an end. As we look to new futures, we want to say a heartfelt thank you to the millions of passionate players who have supported us and our mission to make beautiful, imaginative games with a heart. We are so grateful. Sony is swallowing them up and shutting them down, moving them on. PixelOpus, by the way, like I said, made Concrete Genie, and their last official day of operating will be June 2nd. The only other game that I can think of that PixelOpus worked on was Entwined. It was a studio founded back in 2014 and really never made a huge hit. As adorable as Concrete Genie is, by the way, if you haven't had a chance to play it, take a look at it. If you don't expect like greatness, like this amazing experience from it, but I liked it. I thought it was a cool idea, an interesting concept, and very pretty to look at as well. Of course, our best goes out to anyone affected by this. Hopefully, you're able to find jobs very quickly, maybe even throughout Sony itself. Maybe they'll reassign most of you. Not really sure how the layoffs are going to get affected here. Speaking of layoffs, let's go to GameIndustry.biz for this next story. Plaion is restructuring, and layoffs are planned. Plaion being part of that giant Embracer conglomerate, you know, the massive entity that owns God knows how many IPs and had hundreds, it feels like, projects going simultaneously, and we're all wondering how the hell can they do it and still be profitable? They can't. Moving on to the article itself. Plaion is restructuring its games publishing business, which is expected to result in layoffs, GamesIndustry.biz has learned. Sources close to the matter has told us the number of jobs are at stake as the publisher, which rebranded from Koch Media last year, merges multiple publishing labels into one. As a side note, whenever you merge companies together, there are always redundancies, which means people get fired. A slide from an internal presentation showed us. Let me start over. A slide with the internal presentation shared with us shows the company plans to drop 3 of its publishing labels: Deep Silver, the people behind the flop that was Saints Row. I think that was Deep Silver. Oh, God, I have to look this up now. Hold on. I think Saints Row was made by Deep Silver. I think that was them. Published by Deep Silver, made by Volition. That's what it was. Volition made it, published by Deep Silver. My mistake. I wanted to make sure I was correct on that, though. I don't know if I necessarily feel like being called today's Adam Sessler is a compliment there, but I will take it as one, I guess. Not an impressive individual, by the way. Where was I? Yes. A slide from an internal presentation shared with us shows some of the company's plans to drop 3 of its publishing labels: Deep Silver, Prime Matter, and Ravenscourt, and instead publish all the associated titles under the Plaion brand. Sources tell us the aim is to produce fewer titles at higher quality, which seems to be running directly counter to Embracer Group's ideology of, we're buying a bunch of B-tier shit and we're going to crank out nostalgia left and right. So if this is the direction that Embracer Group as a whole is going in, I would expect massive cancellations, multiple layoffs, and many a studio being shut down. Something to consider as we look over the next few months. We need to keep an eye on Embracer's bloat, as it were. Because if that is the direction they're going in, that's going to be a lot of fat cuff in that company. GamesIndustry.biz reached out to Plaion for comment and clarification. A company representative told us the restructuring was part of our simplifying our publishing operations, and they'll likely only affect 5 to 6 jobs. That seems like bullshit. I highly doubt only 5 or 6 jobs are going to get lost on the shuffle here, but that is what they're saying. The company employs over 2,000 people. They also emphasize that this is not an immediate change, but a process that will take up to 12 months. Titles may even be developed out of Deep Silver, Prime Matter, and Ravenscourt over the next few years, so you'll probably still see some of these names kicking around, is what they're saying. Back in November, Embracer Group announced it was launching a special review of all of its business operations due to the challenge of geopolitical and social issues around the world and the new macroeconomic reality. That's a nice fancy way of saying we're hemorrhaging money and we need to trim the fat. That's what that means. Over the past 6 years, Embracer has spent billions of dollars on dozens of acquisitions, including Koch Media back in 2018. According to its 2022 annual report, the company owned 118 studios across 10 operative groups, such as Plaion Nordic, THQ Nordic, with a headcount of just shy of 13,000 people. They own 118 studios. No company needs that many. None. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of merging. You're going to see a lot of layoffs. You're going to see a lot of redundancy throughout Embracer Group over the next 12 months or so. They might try to do it slowly so they don't look like they overextended themselves, because that seems to be the general opinion. But they coming. Who boy are they coming. Let's take a look back at chat here. Keep Koch brothers far away from the game. Okay, so, okay. Koch Media Group is not the Koch brothers, I believe. They are two completely separate things. It's like it's a common last name kind of thing. But I don't believe the Koch brothers have anything to do with Koch Media Group in this case. So just keep that in mind. 100% keep that in mind. Moving on to the final story of the day here, and once again it does have to do with layoffs. This is via PC Gamer. Game engine maker Unity lays off 600 employees and plans to close half of its offices worldwide. I'm telling you, and what more can I say this week that I haven't said over the past, 6 months now it feels like? It's going to be a real rough time, and I will also say this, it's not going to stop anytime soon. I don't think there's been a show I've done since October of last year where I didn't announce some form of layoffs somewhere. And we're not even close to the end. So if you're into the industry, keep your resume updated. Try to save up as much money as you can. Build yourself up a little emergency reserves. And be prepared for you suddenly just not to have a job one day. Because there is a massive tightening across everything going on right now. Be aware and do your best to be prepared for it. I know that is easier said than done. To the article. Unity has laid off approximately 600 employees in its third round of layoffs over the past year, according to the Wall Street Journal report, which says the company is also looking to cut the number of offices it maintains worldwide in nearly in half over the next few years, from 58 to 30. That's also something to note, too, is that a lot of offices are just getting shuttered and not being replaced with anything. Which means these big, massive cities, New York, San Francisco, Tokyo, London, Berlin, etc., are having massive income drains because they're not collecting taxes from these buildings being vacant. The property owners can't get new people in there, so they're losing money. The businesses nearby that relied on people working in these buildings to come by for lunch and general shopping, they're losing money. All that reduces income to the city itself, and it causes a death spiral, where people suddenly start fleeing these cities, causing even more stress on the economic situation in there. It's going to be bad. And yes, I'm giving you the very simplified bird's eye view of it. I can go into greater detail later, but that's a different topic for a different style show. It is going to get worse. Be prepared. Back to the article. According to Unity, the layoffs are part of an effort to reduce layers of management, streamline its operations, and improve the company's profitability. It's all about setting ourselves up for higher growth, said Unity CEO John Riccitiello. A name that people who have been paying attention to gaming news are very familiar with. He used to be the head of EA. He moved on to Zynga, I believe. We will verify that momentarily. But his name has been associated with disaster after disaster after disaster for the better part of a decade. He is the very definition of someone who continuously falls up. Elevation. What was he part of? Zynga? Electronic Arts. Joined Elevation. Maybe not. Maybe he went from EA straight to Unity. Who was the head of Zynga then? Who was the head of Zynga? Because Zynga was also a big name there for a little bit. Don Matrick. Yes, the Microsoft's version of John Riccitiello went to Zynga. Don Matrick, my mistake. But John Riccitiello led EA during one of its darkest periods in gaming. Was kind of left that, joined Unity, and we all kind of knew that was going to be an issue. Anyways, moving on. The job cuts followed two previous rounds of layoffs, one in January and one in June 2022, which saw more than 500 people out of work. The 600 employees let go this round represent a little more than 8% of Unity's total workforce. I don't know how many happened in January, unless January and June were both 500 people. That means that Unity has laid off roughly 15% of its workforce in the past year. And I highly doubt that this is the final round of layoffs. So, best wishes to all those affected by this. I hate sounding like the messenger of bad news here, but it is going to get worse. Take a look at chat real quick before we wrap things up here. You have a friend in the industry. He has been shuffled to 4 different studios in the past 2 years. From Daybreak to Rogue Planet to PlayStation, now he works for Amazon and works on New World. Yeah, I know a lot of... I didn't even know New World was still a thing. Damn. I know a lot of people who have also been shuffled around the industry lately. Studios are going kaboom. They're no longer offering promotions. They're wrapping up projects with no new projects ahead, and people start kind of seeing the writing on the wall and abandoning ship, only to have to do the same thing 6 months later. It's going to get real nasty because you're going to have a sudden flood of talent hitting the market and no one willing to buy them. No one willing to pick them up. It's going to get real bad. So please do your best to be prepared, and be prepared to look for a job outside the industry you've possibly worked in for 20 years. I know that's hard. I know that's scary, but you need to be ready. Chance favors the prepared mind. And it's best that you have all of these fallback positions and all this preparedness and never use it than to be caught unawares and unable to deal with what's going on. With that, I do believe that does it for the show as well. A little bit of a shorter show. We've been doing a couple smaller shows over the past few weeks as everyone slowly starts to gear up for the massive info dump we are expecting over the next few weeks. That time that is traditionally E3, and now everyone seems to be doing their own thing. But all these companies are kind of keeping their powder dry when it comes to news right at the moment, other than the boring business stuff. I do expect starting possibly as early as the end of this month to be bombarded with news as we get a rumored PlayStation showcase, as we have the Xbox Bethesda showcases, we have the Starfield announcement, as we have Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest kicking off. I would imagine that we have some news coming up from Squaresoft soon, probably doing their own thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we caught a Nintendo Direct in a few months, probably maybe by the end of July. I've had to venture a guess just to kind of keep things rolling with whatever they have planned for life after Tears of the Kingdom. We are on the precipice of a flood of news, but until then, these shows are going to be shorter, and I'm going to be a little bit more ramblier. It is what it is. Thank you all for showing up. This has been GamePoints episode 356. I do stream this show live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at twitch.tv/GamePoints. Can't watch us live, however, catch us at a myriad of video hosting platforms, be them YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, etc. You can follow myself on Twitter at CapitalistPig21. You can also join our Discord server, link provided down there if you want to be part of the greater GamePoints community. In the description and on that Discord server are the links to all the stories we talked about today. I recommend you go take a look at them and read them yourselves. That way you retain the information a little bit better. I do stream throughout the week in general on this channel right here as well. And if you like what you see here, you know what streamers wants when it comes to likes, bits, follows, subs, subscribes, all that good stuff. Thank you all for showing up, and until next time, I'm out of here.